Williams here. For my GIS application project, I created a web map to help homebuyers assess the risks of purchasing property in Boulder County. So you can see Boulder County in gray there, just northwest of Denver along the Front Range of the Rocky Mountains. It's a fairly desirable place to live, but it comes with some risks. In recent history, there's been flooding, there have been wildfires, there's a lot of oil and gas hydraulic fracturing that goes on the east side of Boulder County. And then there are also what are called metropolitan tax districts, where your property taxes can be as much as 2 times that of neighboring areas. And so these are kind of the risks used to help create an application for prospective home buyers to evaluate so they can decide, are they comfortable being in these locations or a potential location relative to where these risks can be highest. So the data used includes the Frac Tracker Alliance fracking wells. They host this data state by state, and so you can download it as a shape file of data points with all sorts of attributes describing the wells, their owners, their location. I also included the FEMA 100-year floodplain. That's available as a polygon shapefile. I also included a long-term wildfire hazard potential, and that is a raster image. Colorado also publishes a shapefile of the metropolitan tax districts as a polygon shapefile. And then I used the U.S. Census Bureau's county boundaries shapefile to isolate Boulder County. The methodology, I used Jupyter Notebook with GeoPandas to process the fracking well shapefile. And we'll take a walk through that in just a second here. And then with the floodplains, fire risk, and metro districts, those I just brought straight into ArcGIS and then reduced everything down to just within Boulder County so as not to bog down the map. And then once I had everything symbolized and reduced down to Boulder County, I exported it to ArcGIS Online, where I created the web application. So now we'll go to the Jupyter Notebook. As I mentioned, I used GeoPandas instead of regular pandas because GeoPandas is able to read shapefiles with just a single line. Using pandas, I found that you had to do a for loop and go through each line of the shapefile and tell it how to bring it into a data frame before you could start working with it. And with GeoPandas, it was just a single line straight in. And it is a spatially enabled data frame. Out here on the end, you see you've got this geometry column that it includes. So once I had it in as a data frame, I removed the attributes that I was not interested in keeping to get it pared down to just the county, the facility status, and then the latitude and longitude. From there, using the API county code, I could drop all the counties that were not Boulder County. And then I did a little bit of processing to convert the facility status codes into a human readable description that would be easier for folks to comprehend when they're navigating the map. Once everything was boiled down, again with GeoPandas, it was just a single line to write everything back out to a shapefile that could be brought straight into ArcGIS. So here is the web application. I have a layer list on the right here, and we'll flick through those in a minute. But you can search for addresses, and it will put a marker down. So if a user of this application wants to pinpoint a particular property and then evaluate its proximity to these risks, you can do that. Or you could just turn them on and off. So we'll zoom in a little bit. We'll start with the metro taxing districts. So that's these green areas here. They come in as simply a polygon, and you can, there's some transparency there so you can see what roads are within the taxing district. A lot of these, if you click on them, you get the name of the district, there's a URL, And that way, if you need to get in touch with somebody there or figure out more or learn more about what's going on with that taxing district, you can. So if we turn that off, we can turn on the fracking wells that I've been talking about. So here you can see that they're symbolized with colors representing their status. You can click on any of the wells and see that status, see the latitude and longitude. And then in order to give users of the application idea of how close they are to these, you can turn on the fracking well buffer. So fracking wells do off-gas unwanted chemicals that they extract from the ground, and that goes out as just straight into the air. When they're putting these wells in, they can be fairly loud, and they leave the lights on at night to continue construction through the night. So there's a lot of factors here and a lot of reasons why you might not want to be right next to a fracking well. And so this buffer area gives you an idea of just how close you are. And if you wanted to, say, thread the needle outside the influence of these wells. Now, this half-mile buffer was somewhat arbitrary. It would be nice in a future version of this to be able to size that buffer by the user so they can decide, what their comfort level is. If we turn off those wells, we can also turn on FEMA's 100-year floodplain, and we can turn on, similarly, a half-mile floodplain buffer just to get an idea of where a property's location is relative to these areas. And so an interesting area that comes up is this Lower Clover Basin, where you can see it's kind of an island outside of that half-mile buffer, but you can also imagine that an area like this might be hard to get in and out of in the event of a 100-year flood. If it's any more than a 100-year flood, you can imagine that these areas will creep into this half-mile buffer. So it seems like a reasonable distance here to provide some context for potential home buyers. Lastly, we'll look at the fire risk. As I mentioned, this was a raster data set, and the symbology is as follows on the legend. I set the non-burnable areas, which is mainly the urban areas, as well as the water to be a transparent, completely transparent. And then we color coded based on the level of risk. So you can see the highest risks here are in the Rocky Mountains, where the national forests are. And then it tapers off as you get into more urban areas where there's more concrete, blacktop, and development. Well, that is my WebGIS application. Thank you.